Hello, neighbor. We're going to be starting into our next study. In fact, it's going to be a study that will take us all summer. We're going through the book of Romans. Kate will be in with us in just a minute. She went to get a Bible. She wanted to make sure that she had a Bible because we're going to encourage you to mark your Bibles with this study. Go ahead and find one Bible that you can continue to use. We are going through the book of Romans. That is a big book. But we're going to do something with what we call turnaround words. And you may want to underline some words, maybe even date when you first studied the passage. I had to get my Greek New Testament. You know that Romans was written in the language of the time that was mainly used around the Roman Empire. And it was Greek. But, oh, hello, Kate. Okay,
Hello.
She's got her Bible, and she's ready. We're going to take, I would suggest that we just take a couple verses today. Yeah, especially since you noted there's 16 chapters in this.
Yes, there is.
But I think we can get our mind around it, and let's just hear the first 7 verses. But those first 7 verses are kind of the way we would address an envelope. You know, we put an address. Do you remember envelopes?
Yes, I do.
Okay, all right. I thought maybe you were used to text messaging all the time. So,
Both.
well, okay, both. All right. On an envelope, you have to put your name, up in the upper left-hand corner. You can tell, oh, this came from, and this is an ancient form of spam. Was just some type of literature that didn't have a name, but. This would have Paul, and it would identify who Paul was, and then it would say who it was to address to. So let's hear the envelope. You have the New International Version, which is fine. Why don't you go ahead and read verses 1 through 7.
Okay. Paul, a servant of Christ Jesus, called to be an apostle and set apart for the gospel of God, the gospel he promised beforehand through his prophets in the Holy Scriptures, regarding his Son, who as to his human nature was a descendant of David, and who through the Spirit of holiness was declared with power to be the Son of God, by his resurrection from the dead, Jesus Christ, our Lord. Through him and for his name's sake, we receive grace and apostleship, to call people from among all the Gentiles to the obedience that comes from faith, and also are among those who are called to belong to Jesus Christ. To all in Rome who are loved by God and called to be saints. Grace and peace to you from God our Father and from the Lord Jesus Christ.
I'm going to start with that last line first. Grace and peace to you. He could have started off the letter saying, you guys better watch out because I'm coming. He could have started a letter off and said, fear and trembling is what you need to have. He could have started a letter off and saying, a pack of guilt is what you should be feeling. But instead, you know how he started every letter?
Grace and peace.
Grace and peace. Yeah, charis kai irene is what's in the Greek. It may be good for you just to underline those 3 words, grace and peace to you. That is what Paul brought in almost every letter that he addressed. He wasn't trying to load people down with guilt. He was trying to bring something. And did you hear there was one word that was in there several times, all the way through that?
I did.
What did you hear?
We are called.
Called. That was the word that is. Now, what we're going to do in this study in the book of Romans is we're going to take some words and talk about how Paul turns around certain words. We aren't quite ready to do that, but we've got our first word, don't we? Our first word is call. That, in fact, Paul was called. You remember how he was called?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you want to tell us a little bit about his call?
Blinded on the roadside with fish-like scales in his eyes.
Yep, he had scales in his eyes, and he was blind for 3 days until finally he was baptized.
Yes.
And then his calling was. And if you listen carefully, his calling was not just to his own people who were Israelite, but he was called to bring Jesus out to the nations. And he's doing that here in the book of Romans. There's a number of things. He says that he was called, but he calls himself what at verse 1?
An apostle.
An apostle. What is an apostle?
Someone sent out.
Someone sent out. Very good. Okay, because apostle is really close to another word that we use for something that's sent out.
Epistle.
An epistle, a letter that is sent out. Paul considers himself an epistle, an apostle. He's sent out to...
He's called.
He's called. He's chosen by God and sent out. But then he kind of, at the very end of that, called would be the word that I want you to underline in your Bible. We are all called to call. He's called an epistle. I'm in verse 5. He's called a letter to call people from among all the nations to their faith. And then he says, and to you are called. And he may be talking to people who may not feel like they are called. Do you always feel like you're called, Kate?
No, I don't.
You know, Kate, you come to be in a special place. You are called. In this way, little did we realize in the midst of this COVID epidemic, we'd be called to proclaim the gospel in a new way. Little do we know where our letter is going to end up, where we're going to be called. But your call comes not just because of something inside of you. It came, as he claims here, through the Holy Scriptures that you've heard as we gather in the sanctuary or as we gather online. Through the Scriptures, God continues to call. Sometimes just texting, but calling you, saying, Kate, you are called. But then there's another way that we know that call is given to us. Did you catch it in verse 4?
Yes, I did.
What did you hear?
Through the resurrection.
Not something that you necessarily saw, but a proclamation that God's call, that was his ringtone, you know? That was his ringtone given to the world. Jesus Christ is that message. And Jesus calls us by saying, you are forgiven, you are loved, grace and peace to you. Yeah. So we're going to be seeing a number of these words. Paul says he was called, but he's not trying to be presumptive and saying I was the only one. He's saying that calling is going out into the world. You are all epistles, letters from God sent to bring grace and peace. So I think we started the book of Romans with,
I think so.
and that is just his outside envelope.
Yeah, that's just 7 verses.
I think we got a lot to do, don't we?
I think so.
So I'll tell you what, Kate, I'm going to go ahead and put our calling up here on the cross. We'll figure out what the flip side word should be, because we say it's always we're always going to be saying these words are transformed as we go all the way through the book of Paul. But I'll say good study, Kate,
Yes.
for you. And
See you later, neighbor.